Becoming a mom changes everything, but you shouldn't let it erase you. Welcome to the Single Mom Glow Up, the podcast where we're spilling all the tea on single motherhood, self-care, and dating. I'm Bree, your host and fellow single mom, navigating life, love, and everything in between. Wherever you are on your single mom journey, this is the place where you'll find real stories, honest advice, and a community that just gets it. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive into some juicy conversations that will inspire, empower, and keep it all the way real. Let's get into it today. So, in case you didn't read the title because you were just so excited to listen to the podcast, I get it. Today we're talking about the importance of rediscovering your identity outside of motherhood, right? It's different for everyone, right? But recent studies are showing that for the first 2 years postpartum, like your life belongs to your child. And that is a necessary transition. It is initiation into motherhood. But at a certain point, you are meant to come out of it. You are meant to make your way back to the person that you are and the person that you are as a mother, right? And a lot of times we get stuck in being a mother 24/7. And that takes a toll. It definitely takes a toll. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this one's near and dear to my heart because I didn't realize, right? If you're listening, maybe you're just like, oh, I'm not quite. I didn't realize how big of a key it was to differentiate myself as a mother versus differentiate myself as a person until I was sobbing to my grandmother on the phone. And she was like, what? I can't remember exactly how she asked it, but she was like, what have you done? No, she said, what do you have in your life right now that brings you joy that's just for you? And it made me cry harder because I couldn't think of an answer. The answer was nothing. My life belonged to my daughter and my son, 100%. And any time that I did have to myself which back then I really didn't have any time to myself, but any time that I did have to myself was spent lamenting about being a single mom, about life not turning out the way that I thought it was, wallowing in shame, wallowing in, I guess, self-hate. It wasn't like a loud and, you're a terrible person kind of self-hate. It was a very quiet, not taking care of myself kind of self-hate. Maybe more of a self-neglect than a self-hate. Yes. So this is near and dear to my heart because that conversation cracked me open. It made me start to learn how to prioritize myself. That was a solid 5 years ago, and I didn't necessarily learn how to do that just immediately from that. It was definitely a journey. But that was the start of it. So, if you're like me and you want to know like where and what, and obviously I'll have this outlined in the description, but we're first going to talk about why your identity outside of motherhood matters. We're going to talk about some common challenges to rediscovering your identity. We're going to go through the actual steps to rediscovering your identity. These are steps that I use to reconnect with myself, which is funny that I keep saying reconnect because motherhood does change you. So the person that I reconnected with wasn't exactly the same person who I was before I became a mother, which for me, it was a very stark difference because I was literally 19 years old when I became a mother and didn't actually start doing this until I was about 24, 23, 24. So a lot of just developmental growth happens during that time period that changes you a lot as a person, usually with that frontal lobe still developing. But Yeah. So that being said, we'll go into what your rediscovered identity looks like in everyday life so that you can have a picture of what your goal will be, not to say, oh, I want to rediscover my identity and then not know what that's going to look like. Like, no, you're going to know what it looks like and to know if maybe you're already on this path, whether you're on the right track. Okay. So let's get right into it because if you've been listening to the other episodes, I get off topic, hence why I haven't outlined in the first place. So if you see me looking down, I am reading from my outline that I wrote. Okay, so motherhood is only one part of who you are. It's beautiful, it is significant, but but it is not all of who you are. You are not just a mother, you are so much more. Okay, it also benefits, I'm going to put my therapist hat on for a second. It benefits your mental health. Okay. I did experience postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. It benefits your mental health to have an identity outside of your motherhood, right? And no, I remember there was recently I saw someone on one of my threads who was saying how her oldest is moving out, or her young only. The last of her children is moving out, and she has no idea what she's going to do and how she's dreading it. As a single mom, she's dreading her kids not being around, going off to college, and not it just being her. And it's like, well, yeah, of course you dread it. You spent the last 18 years ignoring yourself, right? And so, if you don't know who you are, if you don't have a life or even an identity outside of being a mother, those things are terrifying. If you are if you're sending your kids to someone who you know is irresponsible and neglecting them, but you don't really have a choice because of courts, ignore what I'm about to say. But if you're sending your kids to their dads every other weekend and you're like, oh my gosh, I miss them so much. Like I'm sobbing because they're gone. And you don't have an identity outside of motherhood. And I'm not saying that to shame you or anything like that. I'm saying it because it's true. Like if you had an identity outside of motherhood, you would be able to just let go for those 2 nights and be like, oh my gosh, I have time to do all the things that I want to do. But if your life revolves around your kids, even though it doesn't need to revolve around your kids, that's an indicator that your identity outside of your motherhood matters. Right there also shows you the benefit to your mental health, right? If you have an identity outside of motherhood, when your kids are gone, some people have 50-50, some people have whatever the 2 week, I'm not a math girly, whatever the 2 weekend a month thing is. Um, if you're like me, you don't have any of that. But if you're also like me, a few years ago they would go stay with a parent out of state for a few weeks, maybe a month. And that is like, oh my gosh, what do I do for a month? And I've experienced both, right? I've experienced not having an identity outside of motherhood where I'm, oh my gosh, this has been the worst 3 weeks of my life. I'm moping around, I'm crying all the time. I'm just like depressed without them there because it's like, what is my purpose outside of providing for them and being there anymore? But the more recent times that they have gone for a few weeks to a month, I'm like, now sending them off, you know, of course it's going to be a little bit sad, but just once they're there and they're safe, I'm like, yo, like I'm me. I'm free to just be me. I actually feel like that a little bit when they go to school now. They weren't school age when it was going on. They always had my son. But that freedom to be yourself, if you don't have a self to be, then it doesn't feel like freedom. But when you have a self to be and you have that space from your kids, it's just like so much excitement. And I want that for you if you want it for yourself. Modeling for your children. This is a big thing. I talk about this a lot because there's this extra pressure on single moms to be perfect, but perfect is different to everyone. And there's nothing that you can necessarily do to be perfect. One, as a mother in general, but two, if someone is hating on you for being a single mom, there's nothing that you could say or do that's going to change their mind because they're not really hating on you specifically or even single moms as a thing. They're most likely hating on a specific person in their life. Anyway, who you need to be thinking of and who you are thinking of. I know you're thinking of them, but maybe a bit of a mindset shift for some, if not all of you, is modeling for your kids. They are going to benefit from seeing you as a whole person, someone with passions, hobbies, dreams, your own identity, and the boundaries to maintain those things so that they can be someone like that, right? But if they see you consistently going against your own boundaries, not having anything to do, leaning on them for emotional support, and just overall only being a mom. They don't get to see what it was to be a full individual, right? They only see you as their mother, and if it is having a negative impact on your mental health, to be that and all of that, and only that, I mean, then that's what they see. And that's not, like I said, I'm not sitting here like shaming you and being like, you shouldn't be depressed about this. No, like if you're depressed, it makes sense. Like being a single mom is not easy, okay? But moving towards building up your own identity can help you step out of that and help model something different for them in the long term, piece by piece, not all at once. Okay, you already have enough on your plate. And then finally, long term fulfillment. And this is what I was kind of getting at with that example of the mom whose kids are now off to college. Rediscovering your identity helps you avoid any resentment, any guilt, and then feeling lost or super lonely as your kids grow older and become independent, right? Like you are a whole person. Yes, you're a mother, but you're a whole person as well. And so it matters. You have to. I don't even like to say that to people, especially my demand avoidant self. But you have to build your identity. All right. So what are some common challenges, right? Because I'm sitting here talking about why it matters, right? But we need to get into the challenges, so that you can notice if you have this specific challenge so you can overcome it. All right. Common challenges. Mom guilt, feeling selfish for wanting time for yourself. Raise your hand if you have ever experienced mom guilt, but don't do it too fast because it will cause a ripple effect. Basically, there's so many people who I don't most, if not all, moms experience some form of mom guilt. And sometimes that mom guilt can be stronger or more pervasive as a single mom because it's just you. And there's a lot more pressure if it's just you. And so wanting time for yourself as a single mom feels worse than if you have a partner to kind of give the responsibility to because they very much did help you make that, right? Or, if they stepped in, they've assumed some responsibility. So that is a big one, right? And I always say, leave mom guilt at the door, throw it out. Like if you are honestly trying to level up and glow up as a single mom, you just have to leave the mom guilt. The best way that I do it is to remind myself that one, mom guilt usually is not how I feel about motherhood, or actually, it's not true. It's someone else's projections of what motherhood should be. And that someone else is just usually spouting the same like traditional like toxic patriarchal way of viewing motherhood. Who are you touting this white cis male way of thinking of things and motherhood? Like what? That has nothing to do with you. Shut up. Basically mom guilt. Shut up. I don't have anything to feel guilty about. I'm here, I'm doing the damn thing every single day. to the best of my ability. Therefore, to help me be able to do that, I have to take care of myself, right? I have to have my own identity to take care of myself. I have to know who I am outside of being a mother so I can step away from being a mother. The same way you have a job, you can't do that job 24/7 and still be good at it. You can't. Like, you have to leave work. There are laws around that. There aren't laws around mothering, right? But if you try to get your nanny to nanny 24/7 and not pay them six figures, you're going to have a really hard time finding a nanny, right? Because it is a job, it is work, it requires of you. And so you have to take time to establish your identity, to know how to take care of yourself. Societal pressure. There is an unspoken expectation for moms, especially single moms, to prioritize motherhood over everything. But there's also the piece of, if you are working, you're also somehow expected to be able to work and to not have to take time off and all of that stuff, right? So you can challenge this notion and be a multi-dimensional mother, right? I mean, you are that already. You're already doing that. And so you can shift it a bit for yourself, for your own benefit. It's okay to do things for your own benefit, to rediscover your identity and actually level up. It seems counterintuitive if you are subscribing to mom guilt, if you're subscribing to societal pressure and some of the other challenges, to lean into taking care of yourself and learning about yourself and prioritizing yourself. But doing those things will make you a better mother. Time constraints. It's really hard to have you time, right? Like, as a single mom, especially if you're doing it all on your own and have zero, zero, zero support, it can be really hard to carve out your own time. I do have, I mean, just, if you don't already follow me on Instagram and mainly TikTok, don't follow me on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok and Threads. And I post a lot of tips about like time saving and all, how to take care of yourself and how to infuse things into what you're already doing to improve your quality of life when you don't have time. And then fear of judgment. This is a big fear of judgment. Oh my gosh. So, depending on when you're hearing this, it is now November 2024. It was around November 2022, but it actually started in October 2022. 2 years ago, I shared a post that went viral on Instagram. And I thought that was exactly what I wanted, but it went viral because it was very relatable for a lot of single moms. But it was also something that people who aren't single moms and or who hate single moms could easily project their hate onto. And so I think I got 2 million views. I had like random people commenting. I had celebrities commenting and liking and sharing, and it just kept blowing up and blowing. I mean, even I just got a like on it today, and it was 2 years ago. So, anyway, that judgment, I was not expecting the level of judgment that I got for simply sharing my feelings about something that had happened in my life that a lot of other single moms have had happen to them that they also related to. But there was so much unnecessary, like twisty, turny mental backflip hate on it. And it shut me down. I basically, up until recently, didn't use Instagram heavily since. I tried to go with the momentum maybe for a couple more weeks, but once it really hit for me, like that judgment, I was just like, I couldn't think of things to post. I couldn't, like, it created this huge creative block for a while. And so I had to let go of the fear of judgment. And what helped me do that was things happening in my personal life, with, family, like extended family, a friend group kind of dissolved. It was nothing that I did that was wild or out of pocket. I just set boundaries. And then, you know, people who don't like you setting boundaries show themselves. And so that's what happened. And when that happened with the same grandmother who gave me that great advice, right? Like she gave me that great advice, and, you know, something not so great happened a while later. People are complicated. It is what it is. I don't even, sometimes you just got to set boundaries with people and love them from a distance. And so that's what I chose to do, because it's like, you hurt me, you didn't apologize, but I'm not going to subject myself to that anymore. But it doesn't make me love you any less. Like, I still love her very much. It wasn't an easy decision, but I'm also very selfish about myself when it comes to love and care. And so basically, from those things, I was afraid of being labeled as a bad mom or neglectful or, you know, not just whatever, right? In the case of the thing with the extended family, it was more so that I was afraid of being seen negatively for something that wasn't negative, but like still being perceived that way. So the point is, I encourage you to let go of outside opinions and focus on what you and your kids need the most, which is joyful and authentic love. And if you're afraid of judgment from others that don't really like, are they raising your kids? Because if they're not, their judgment doesn't matter. But that doesn't take the fear away per se unless you work on it. Anyway, all right, let's get into these practical steps to rediscovering your identity. Okay. Revisit the things that you liked in the past, old hobbies, old interests, passions you had before you were a mom. What did you enjoy that brought you joy or fulfillment, however small? It could be small things, it could be big things. One thing for me was tennis, something that I've always, always, always wanted to get back into. For some reason, I find it difficult to do cardio. I actually did get back into tennis 2 years ago, and it was so great. Oh my gosh, it was so lovely, and it was like wonderful to see how my, body, my muscles remembered how to do things. But when I got home, or on the way home, it was like my body was buzzing with so much energy that it made me like feel panicky. And I was like, I could push through this. I could go back into tennis a few more times and see if this is just like a one-time thing, a two-time thing, a three-time thing, or a forever thing. But I didn't, because I didn't have the bandwidth to. That was a time where I was working from home as a therapist, and the kids were home all summer, and my partner at the time was working long hours, and I was at home with two kids and a puppy all day because they weren't in camp or anything like that. And I was balancing working, and I was also baking and like doing shows on the weekends. It was just so much. I didn't have the bandwidth to like see if tennis could fit. But that gets me to the other thing, baking. And it turned into something way bigger than just baking as a hobby, funnily enough. But that's something that I've always loved. I still love it. And even when I talk about baking, it's like my whole spirit lights up because I just love it so much. And so I revisited that, and that turned into a whole side business because I ended up selling it because people were just like, this is so good, you should sell it. And so I tried it, and selling it was so fun until life circumstances changed. And so I don't have access to being able to sell it right now, which sucks. But revisiting those past things, I've been baking since I was 13 and playing tennis since I was 10. I played from 10 to 18. And then baking, I've done on and off, but basically stopped when I had kids for a while. So, revisiting those past things. And then, if you don't have those things, or if everything ends up like tennis for you, you can explore new passions. Okay. Be open to discovering new things, things that you've always wanted to try but never really tried. Maybe that's dance classes, getting into reading or plant parenthood, even maybe solo travel, especially if you're like a 50-50 custody schedule kind of girly. Rediscovery isn't always about going back. And I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, especially if you've changed a lot as a person in general and just haven't realized it yet. Sometimes it's about finding out who you are now as opposed to going back to who you used to be. Okay. And then set small goals, micro goals, especially if you are neurodivergent like me, or just otherwise need things to be bite sized. Maybe your life is super busy and making big changes takes too much out of the things that are a priority for you, although you should be your priority as well. But setting small goals for personal development, choosing one area at a time, whether that's your health, whether that's your career, pursuing the career that you actually want to be in, whether that's, going for new schooling or more schooling or initial schooling, or whether that's creative projects, and then set small, achievable goals, not just to reach the goals, which that is part of it, but to fuel your sense of self. So you want to make sure that the goals are small enough that you reach them and not that they're so big that you can't reach them, because that's only going to discourage you further. That's going to make your confidence take a hit. And you don't need that right now. That when you're literally just trying to connect with your identity as a single mom. Okay. And then this one is major. If I haven't said it, is self care and boundaries. Okay. It is incredibly important for you to carve out time for self reflection, okay? Whether that's journaling, meditation, dancing, which is my new fave, anything that allows for self growth, emphasis on self. But it is incredibly important to carve out time for that, especially with your identity. Right? Like, how are you going to rediscover yourself if you're not spending time with yourself? I'll put it this way: if you were dating someone, how are you going to get to know them if you don't get to know them? Like, you have to spend time with them, you have to observe them, you have to do things with them. It's the same thing with getting to know yourself and with getting to know your identity now outside of motherhood. You have to spend time with yourself. If you don't like me saying that, that means you don't like yourself. That I used to also not like myself, but it just means it's going to be a little bit harder for you. I would encourage you to figure out what parts of yourself that you like, work with those, and then figure out what parts of yourself you don't like and work with those and work on either liking them, changing them, depending on what they are. But I would work on liking them more so than changing them. And then finally, connect with like minded communities. Okay. Finding single mom communities, following me on TikTok, following me on Threads, especially if you're looking for a community, follow me on Threads. And then any other women focused groups or local groups, there's this amazing Facebook group that I've been in the entire single mom journey, but it's local to my area. I'm in the DMV and it's for DMV single moms. And it is just wonderful. And so if you can find your version of that in your area, or even create a version of that if it doesn't exist in your area, it is a game changer. Sure, if you create something like that on Facebook, it might take a few years to get to the level of the one that I'm in, but it'll be worth it. And you'll be a single mom in some capacity. Maybe you'll grow into like a solo mom, or a co-parenting mom, or a blended family, whatever. But it'll still grow in that time. But the goal in that is to feel supported, to exchange ideas and gain inspiration with people who get it, right? How many times have you shouted into the internet abyss or seen other single moms shout into the internet abyss about single motherhood? And the people who respond aren't single moms and they're just hating. And you're, wow, you don't even get it. Like, why are you hating? But that's what happens, right? And so to find spaces where you can go through this kind of clumsy journey of reconnecting with your identity outside of motherhood, but they also get what it means to do that, or they're on that same journey themselves. Game changer, game changer. I actually also have a text membership. Well, I'll talk about that a bit more at the end. You start doing those steps. You revisit your past interests and see what still works for you. You explore new passions, and what's the expression? You fill it out. You've got some of these hobbies and got some of these hobbies and interests. Some are old, some are new. And then you set small goals for personal development. Right, like with the tennis thing, right? I think what made me take so long to get started with it, despite wanting to do it basically the whole time I was a mother, I told myself, okay, if I do tennis, then I'm gonna have to sign up for like lessons or some type of team. That's a commitment. That's like at least a weekly commitment. I didn't have that, right? I told myself, oh, maybe I could play here or there with like some of my old tennis buddies. And then I was like, well, I don't know their schedule. So, I kind of did that thing, right? And setting those small goals. So I just set a goal to just go see. And so the place that I had like this tennis assessment. They go by I'm not going to talk about the tennis jargon. And so I was just like, let me just go see and I'll just sit on it for a while. And I did that. And, ultimately I chose not to move forward with it. But that was a small goal. That was something I could do that was small, that allowed me to do it, which built my confidence, right? Even though it didn't work out, my confidence was still built. I'm like, I was so glad that I did that for myself, even if it didn't go how I thought it would or how I wanted it to. Okay. And then practicing self-care and boundaries. I talked about the self-care piece. I didn't talk about the boundaries, but that's a big piece too. Knowing when to say no, knowing how to say no, knowing when to say, can I get back to you on that? Because you don't know if you want to say yes or no. That was a game changer for me. In fact, I need to use it today. And then finally, connecting with like-minded communities. So if you start doing those things, here's how you know that you will have started or, been connecting with your identity in everyday life. One, you're going to feel more confidence and you're going to feel more resilience, right? When you know who you are, you're more grounded, you're more confident, you're more secure, and it's easier to bounce back from a setback. I remember those early single motherhood setbacks. Oh my gosh. And things hurt, and they would hurt for days. Or if they didn't hurt for days, like take them out on the people around me, which wasn't fair to them because it's not their fault that my kid's dad was not being good to them. It's like to me as a mother of his children, who he created the children with. Anyway, so you'll have more confidence and resilience, right? You'll have improved relationships. Okay. There can be a bit of codependency. I'm saying this very gently if you can't see my face. There can be a bit of codependency when your entire identity is steeped in motherhood. And then there can also be the flip side, but what I usually see more often, and what, if you are into the things that I say, what you're most likely dealing with is codependency, in the sense of like, you're so used to giving of yourself at your own expense that you probably aren't even realizing the extent to which you are giving at your own expense. You desperately want someone else to do for you what you do for your kids, but also likely other people in your life, whether it's bending over backwards for the career, bending over backwards for the people you date who probably tend to be more avoidant, or just bending over backwards for friends, for family, especially if you were the firstborn daughter in many cases. And that can become your identity, right? If you've always been the mom friend, if you've always been the caretaker, and motherhood is just you now doing that for your actual children, but you've been doing this for people your whole life in some way, you're probably very disconnected from your own identity. And that creates a certain codependency. So, and codependency is not good for your relationships. The same way that narcissism is not good for your relationships. It's just that the driving factor behind both is opposite. So when you have rediscovered your identity on some level, it will result in improved relationships, especially if you get into the self-care and the boundaries, which is why I push those so hard. So you'll have a stronger sense of self, which will allow for healthier, more fulfilling, more authentic relationships with family, friends, and partners, because that codependency leads to resentment, and resentment is like a terrible, terrible blight on relationships, especially unspoken resentment. Another way you can tell is you'll just have a better sense of happiness and inner peace. You'll know that you're more than a mom, and that will give you permission to find joy and peace in your daily life with your kids, right? And without your kids. Because one day you will be without your kids on some level, whether it's, they may move across the country or across the world. I don't, but like if that's what they want, that's where life takes them. And it's there with your kids. Okay. They will thrive when they see you thriving, when they see you happy, and you're being your authentic self. Your kids will thrive. How many times your kids pick up on your energy, whether or not you even believe in energy, which if you're here, you probably do. Your kids will pick up on your energy. If your energy is over giving and you're a bit of a martyr or something like that, super codependent, your kids will pick up on. They'll either mirror that or it will repel and repulse them so deeply that they will grow into the opposite. What is the opposite of codependent? It's usually something more on the narcissistic side of things. Not narcissistic as a personality disorder, narcissistic as a personality trait. And so, if you don't want your kids to either be going through what you're through and model the behavior of not having an identity and being the caretaker person all the time, or to go on the other side of things and to be a narcissist, like I said, not personality disorder, but creates and become the kind of person that you want your kids to be, which be happy, fulfilled, and authentic as you rediscover your identity. Okay. All right. Closing thoughts. First of all, thank you for being here, for listening, etc. And I just want to, one, before I get into my encouragement, because I'm heavy on the encouragement, I'm heavy on the love. But before that, I want to say it's super important. Just like I said, I don't be bossing people around, but if there's one thing if you're watching the video, I'm getting like physically uncomfortable trying to contain this. If there is one thing that you do change about your life as a single mom, it is at least connecting with your identity. You can just never listen to this podcast, never listen to anything else that I ever say ever. If you were to do one thing, not even as a single mom, like if you happen to be like a married mom, or even just someone who identifies with that, oh my gosh, I'm the mom friend, I've been the mom friend my whole life, or I've been taking care of my family my whole life, please please connect with your identity. On y'all, like just do it. Just do it. So I want you to take the first step, whether that is making a list of the things that you want to try for the first time or revisit. Yeah, I would say start there. And then also the community piece. I think that's key. And so that's where I'm going to get into talking about the Single Mom Sanctuary. If you are looking for daily encouragement, self-care reminders, and a community that gets you overall, I want you to consider joining the Single Mom Sanctuary. It is literally $10 a month. I'm keeping it super accessibly priced because, as a single mom, I've been there. I get it. Like, ain't a lot of free money going around. Depending on where you are in your journey, you may have a lot of money, but a lot of us don't, and I don't want that to be the reason that you're not getting like this resource. Like I made this for you. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely look in the description. I'll have the link there, and then we can just support each other in finding our joy and purpose outside of it. It's my way of pouring into you everything that one I wish I had poured into me. But more than that, I have a friend who didn't necessarily make it on her single motherhood journey. That's a story for another day. But because she didn't make it, I have all this love and grief. It's grief, but grief is just a love that you are unable to give, right? And so it's just been rattling around in my body for years. And so I pour that into the text messages as well. Just the outpouring of love and the things that me with, but like the love that I have to give that I can't give to her anymore. So that all goes into those texts too. They're super loving. And then also, if for no other reason but to have your phone popping off, like just getting messages here or there, single motherhood can be really lonely, especially if, you're resonating with a lot of the things that I've said today. And, all your time does go to your kids. So you may not necessarily have friends. You may not necessarily be even dating anyone or on the dating apps, which I don't mind you. I don't mind you. I don't I forgot the expression. I get it. Is what I'm trying to say. So definitely, if that resonates and you're like, dang, I am kind of lonely, sign up. And there's nothing wrong with that loneliness. I have experienced that loneliness many times on my journey. So, the resource is there. Why not use it? And why not use it as a step towards rediscovering your identity as well? And taking care of yourself because you deserve it. Like, if you don't deserve $10 a month, I think you deserve $10 a month. Like, you're worth way more, spending way more on yourself than $10 a month. So, that being said, thank you so much for listening. Once again, friendly reminder, take one step this week towards something that you love or rediscovering things that you love. Like if nothing comes to mind, take some time to find something that gives even just a little bit, just a teensy spark of joy. No guilt, no apologies. Okay. Make sure you follow, share this podcast with a single mom friend who you think would resonate, and feel free to leave a review if you found the episode helpful or unhelpful. Talking about fear of rejection, I don't really have it anymore. So, and then once again, if you feel called to join the Single Mom Sanctuary, the link will be in the description. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, for your energy. Yeah. See you in the next episode.